I had just spent $12,000 on a family vacation, and my sister couldn't even find a chair for my son. That's the exact moment the Bank of Julia shut down. Not with a fight, not with shouting, just a quiet little moment at a garden wedding that probably cost more than my first house. My name is Julia Weaver. I'm 34, and for the past 10 years, I've been the reliable one, the daughter who covers the bills when something unexpected happens, the sister who sends money when rent is late, the person everyone calls when life falls apart, and somehow the one nobody ever appreciates. My sister Trina's wedding was beautiful. Giant oak trees, crystal chandeliers, roses everywhere. Everything looked like it belonged in a magazine. And honestly, I was happy for her. My 6-year-old son, Harper, was being so patient. "Mom," he whispered, "do you think they'll let us eat the cake soon?" I smiled. We started walking toward the main table, where Mom, Dad, and Trina's kids were already sitting. But then Trina stepped in front of us. She didn't look emotional. She gave me this tight little smile, the one she used to give me as a kid right before she did something cruel. "Julia," she said quietly, "your son's a little loud for the main table." She glanced at Harper. "My kids are already seated. You're sitting in the back." No explanation, no apology, nothing. She pointed to a cheap plastic folding table shoved next to the DJ booth. No tablecloth, no plates. And tied to one of the chair legs was Princess, Trina's white Bichon Frise. Even the dog knew we'd been pushed aside. I felt something inside my chest crack. Not anger, not yet, just that familiar feeling of being the extra person in my own family. So I didn't make a scene. I took Harper's hand and we walked out. At the door, I left the envelope with the $500 wedding gift. Later, Trina would call that gift insulting. The drive home was quiet. I carried Harper to bed, then I opened my laptop. I stared at the confirmation email for the family vacation I had paid for. 5 days in Aspen, first-class flights, a 5-bedroom cabin. Every single dollar paid by me. For Mom, Dad, Trina, her husband, her kids, even the dog. Shh. By 800 the next morning, my phone wasn't just buzzing, it was screaming. I was sitting at the kitchen island watching Harper dip his toast into an egg like it was the most important job in the world. He was happy. He had no idea he'd been too loud for a wedding. Then the family group chat exploded, the one I'd created called Aspen Adventure with a little snowflake emoji, back when I still believed this trip might actually bring us closer. The first message, Trina. "Julia, I just got an email. My flight was canceled. Must be a glitch. Can you fix it?" I didn't reply. I just took a slow sip of coffee. Then Mom joined in. "Julia, honey, what's going on? You know how stressed Trina is. Don't start drama." A second later, Dad. "This is ridiculous. Answer your sister. We already bought ski gear." For years, this would have been the moment I apologized. I would have blamed a technical error. I would have stayed on hold for 3 hours and paid whatever fee it took just to keep the peace. But this time, I typed 4 words. "The trip is canceled." The typing bubbles appeared instantly, all 3 of them. It looked like a digital heart attack. Then the flood started. "Trina, excuse me? Because of the seating? I didn't want the main table looking like a daycare." "Mom, think about your niece and nephew. Don't punish the children." "Dad, enough of this nonsense. Rebook the trip." I kept scrolling. Not one of them asked why I was hurt. They weren't talking to a daughter. They were talking to a service provider. Then I heard a scratching at the front door. My neighbor Bob was there, looking stressed. In his arms was Princess, Trina's white Bichon Frise. "I found her wandering near the main road," he said. "Nobody's answering the number on her tag." I looked at the dog. While Trina had been busy celebrating her perfect wedding, she'd forgotten her own pet. Back in the kitchen, my phone was still exploding. Trina had moved on to calling me financially abusive. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I took a picture of Princess sitting on the kitchen floor, and I sent that. "Julia, You lost your dog. I found her. Maybe focus on that instead of the vacation you're not going on. A few seconds passed. Then I did something I'd never done before. I tapped the group name, scrolled down, and pressed Leave Group. The chat disappeared. No more messages, no more demands, no more noise. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard in years. The silence that followed leaving the group chat was the most expensive piece I'd ever bought. For years, I had been the atmospheric pressure in our family, invisible, but the only thing keeping their world from imploding. The following Tuesday was the first of the month. To most people, it's just a date. To my sister Trina, it was the day the magic money fairy visited her bank account. I was at my desk when the first tremor hit, an automated alert. Scheduled transfer to Trina W. canceled. For 10 months, I'd been covering her $1,400 rent. It had become part of my monthly overhead, like a utility bill. At 10:14 a.m., my phone vibrated. Dad. Julia, he said in that disappointed baritone, your mother is at Trina's. There's been some clerical error with the rent transfer. It's not an error, Dad, I said. Well, fix it. Your sister is in tears. You can't just pull the rug out because you had a bad time at a wedding. I didn't have a bad time, Dad. I had an epiphany. There was a long silence. Then Dad spoke again, sharper. This is financially vindictive. You make good money. Choosing to see your sister homeless over a seating arrangement, that's not how we raised you. You raised me to be the safety net, but who catches me when I fall? He hung up without answering. I looked at Princess, the little Bichon I'd rescued from the roadside. She hadn't left my side. Trina hadn't even called to ask if her dog was safe. She only cared about the magic money. Suddenly, Princess stood up. She let out a low, sharp growl. A second later, the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was the sound of someone who believed they owned the building. I checked the camera. Trina. Beside her stood Humbert, looking uncomfortable. I didn't open the door. I hit record on the porch camera. Julia, open this door, Trina screamed. I know you're in there. You think you can just stop paying? We have a contract. You promised. She was waving a manila envelope at the camera, her version of the truth. But then Princess did something strange. She ran to the window, whining at Humbert. Not with aggression, but with a weird, frantic recognition. Humbert looked at the window. For a split second, the peacekeeper mask slipped. He looked terrified, not of me, of the dog. The scratching at the glass was the only thing louder than Trina's muffled screaming. Princess wasn't just whining, she was frantic, her tiny paws drumming against the pane as she stared at Humbert. I stayed back, watching the monitor. Julia, you're acting like a child, Trina yelled, slamming her palm against the door. Open up. We need to settle this rent before the landlord calls the sheriff. I finally hit the intercom. There's nothing to settle, Trina. The Bank of Julia is closed. Permanently. Trina froze. She held up that manila envelope with a smirk. Oh, really? I've been documenting everything. Every gift. Every transfer. I'm starting a blog, Julia. The price of sisterly control. If you don't pay the rent by 5 p.m., I hit publish. I felt a chill. She had been taking notes while I was paying her bills. Beside her, Humbert looked like he wanted to dissolve into the porch. He kept glancing at the window. Trina, let's just go. This isn't the way. Shut up, Humbert, she snapped. She owes us. I looked at the window. Princess had something in her mouth, a tattered plush toy. As she shook it, a small silver flash fell out of a ripped seam, a USB drive. I leaned down to pick it up. It was taped inside the stuffing. Humbert was staring at the window, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. Julia, his voice came through the intercom, cracked and desperate. Don't listen to her. We're leaving. He practically dragged Trina off the porch. I watched their car screech away. Then I plugged the drive into my laptop. It wasn't a blog, it was a folder of PDFs, loan applications, high-interest credit lines, all in my name. The digital signatures were messy forgeries. The total, $60,000 for business equipment for a company that didn't exist. Trina wasn't just a parasite, she was a thief. And Humbert had been the one watching the dog and the evidence this whole time. My phone chimed. "Mom, Julia, Trina says you're threatening to sue her? Please, honey, she's your sister. Just pay the rent and let's put this behind us before Dad hears." I didn't reply to Mom. I realized the too loud comment at the wedding wasn't just an insult, it was a distraction. She needed me out of her life before I looked too closely at the fine print of our relationship. I picked up my phone and made one call, not to a lawyer, to the one person who knew exactly how much business equipment Humbert actually bought. The rhythmic boop, boop, boop of a phone dialing, the sharp click of a connection. The flashing lights of the patrol car didn't look like justice. They looked like a neon sign pointing to the end of the life I'd known. I didn't go to the apartment. I stayed home with Harper, making him a grilled cheese and pretending the world wasn't fracturing. I kept my phone on the counter, face up. I was waiting for the explosion. It happened at 7:14 p.m. My phone didn't just ring, it screamed, "Mom." The sound on the other end was pure chaos. Trina shrieking, a man's authoritative voice, something heavy hitting the floor. "Julia, what have you done?" Mom's voice was thin, vibrating with terror. "The police are here. They're taking Humbert. They're talking about fraud." "I didn't do anything, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. I just stopped looking the other way. Then Dad snatched the phone. "You called them on your own family? Your sister is in hysterics. Do you have any idea what this does to our reputation?" "Dad, they stole $60,000 using my social security number," I said, cold and hard. "Where was your concern for my reputation?" Silence. A long, heavy vacuum. He knew, or at least he'd suspected. "We can handle this internally," Dad muttered. "Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you authorized the loans. We'll pay you back, Julia." "With what money, Dad? Yours? Or the money you were planning to borrow from me for the Aspen trip?" I hung up. I looked at Princess. She was sitting by the door, head cocked. She looked relieved. For years, she'd lived in a house full of secrets and stolen mail. I had already forwarded the USB files to the detective. The paper trail was a straight line from Trina's IP address to the account that funded her designer wedding. Then a text from an unknown number, Humbert. "Julia, please, I'll tell you everything. She's the one who made me do it. She said you had so much you wouldn't even notice." I stared at the screen. You wouldn't even notice. That was the core of it. To them, I wasn't a person. I was an orchard, and they were the locusts who thought it was their birthright to strip me bare. Suddenly, a loud thud hit my front door. I checked the camera. Trina. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was sitting on my porch steps, makeup smeared, wedding hair a matted mess. She looked defeated. But then she looked directly into the camera lens. She held up her phone. She wasn't calling the police. She was recording. "Day one of being abandoned by the sister I trusted," she whispered into her phone, her voice dripping with practiced tragedy. "She sent my husband to jail. This is what happens when you let someone control you." She wasn't defeated. She was pivoting. She was turning her crimes into content. The relentless, rapid-fire chirp, chirp, chirp of social media notifications. The low, hollow hum of a refrigerator in a dark kitchen. A heavy, shaky exhale. The notification sound on my phone didn't stop. It wasn't a text message anymore. It was the frantic, high-pitched chirp of Instagram tags. I sat in my darkened kitchen, the glow of the screen reflecting off the marble countertop I'd paid for with 3 years of overtime. Trina had posted the video. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. She was on my porch, the golden hour light hitting her tear-stained face perfectly. The caption, "When your own blood chooses a bank account over a family. My husband is in handcuffs because of a misunderstanding. Hashtag betrayed. Hashtag sisterhood is broken." The comments were a bloodbath. How can someone be so heartless? I always knew that Julia girl was stuck up. People I hadn't spoken to since high school were weighing in, sharing her bravery. My stomach turned. She wasn't just stealing my credit anymore, she was stealing my character. Mom was calling again. I didn't answer. I knew she'd say, "Just save the family name, Julia." I looked at Princess. She was staring at the front door, letting out a low, disapproving huff before resting her chin on my keyboard. She was right. I couldn't fight a fire with more fire. I had to starve it. I opened an email from Bob. "Julia, I've got something. Security footage from the night they borrowed my truck for the business move." I clicked the attachment. It wasn't a move. The video showed Humbert and Trina unloading crates of high-end designer bags, shoes, and jewelry into a storage unit, the business equipment bought with my stolen credit. While she was crying about being homeless, she was sitting on a mountain of liquid assets. I didn't post the video. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself to the trolls. Instead, I sent the link to the detective. Then I hit deactivate account and watched my digital life vanish. The silence was instant and terrifying. A few minutes later, Dad's sedan was idling in my driveway. He didn't get out. He just sat there, the glow of his phone lighting up his face as he scrolled through the wreckage of our reputation. He didn't knock. He just drove away. I realized then that the global audience Trina was performing for didn't matter. The only audience that ever mattered was the 3 people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and they had already chosen their favorite actress. I went upstairs to check on Harper. He didn't need a perfect family. He needed a mother who wasn't a ghost of herself. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the USB drive. There was one more folder I hadn't opened. It was labeled Princess_backup. What had they been recording that they were so afraid of a dog seeing? The soft, mechanical whir of a laptop fan, the heavy click of a folder opening, a sudden, sharp gasp. The glow of the laptop screen felt colder as I clicked on the folder labeled Princess Backup. I expected spreadsheets, maybe a hidden diary of Trina's resilience. I didn't expect what I found. It wasn't a document. It was a series of video clips, short, shaky bursts of footage recorded from a low angle, right at floor level. I realized with a jolt, these were from a pet cam caller. Trina must have bought it for her influencer phase to film a day in the life of a pampered pooch, but she'd forgotten to turn it off, or she'd forgotten that the dog was always in the room. The first clip, 3 months ago, I saw the hem of Mom's floral skirt and the toes of Dad's loafers. "She won't notice, Sadie." Dad's voice was clear, stripped of the disappointed patriarch tone. "Julia's got more money than she knows what to do with. If we put the bridge loan in her name, we save the house. It's just a paper transaction." "But if she finds out," Mom whispered. "She won't," Trina snapped. "Julia's too busy trying to be the hero to actually check her statements. We're doing her a favor, really, giving her a purpose." I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just Trina, it was all of them. They hadn't just been allowing her to drain me, they were the architects. They'd turned my love into a purpose they could exploit. The next clip was worse. The morning of the wedding. Humbert pacing, hands shaking. "The bank is calling, Trina. They know the signatures don't match Julia's tax returns." "Then we make sure she's too distracted to talk to anyone," Trina snapped. "Put her at the back. Tell her the kid is too loud. She'll get all noble and leave early like she always does when her feelings are hurt. By the time she cools off, the Aspen trip will be paid out, and we'll have the cash to cover the installments. Just keep the dog quiet, Humbert. She's been acting weird lately." I closed the laptop. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were ice cold. They hadn't just insulted my son, they had used him as a tactical weapon to trigger my noble exit so they could finish stealing from me. I looked at Princess. She wasn't acting weird. She had been trying to tell me. She had hidden that USB in her toy because it was the only thing Trina hadn't checked. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the police. I called Bob. "Bob," I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's, "I need a favor. You still have that friend who runs the local news segment, the one about consumer fraud? I found the script for Trina's next blog post, but I think the global audience deserves the unedited version." But as I began uploading the clips, a new notification popped up on the neighborhood forum. Trina Weaver, live in 5 minutes. The truth about the Weaver family empire. Don't let my sister silence me. She was going live. She was going to name names, and she had no idea that the dog was about to take the stand. Trina appeared on the screen, her face framed by a soft focus filter that blurred her tears into something ethereal. She was sitting in a dimly lit room, surrounded by stacks of designer boxes she hadn't yet sold. "I never thought I'd have to do this," she whispered. "But my sister, Julia, has gone too far. She's using her wealth to dismantle my life." The comments scrolled at lightning speed. "Monster! Justice for Trina! Cancel Julia Weaver! She's always been the one with the money, and she uses it like a leash. She even stole my dog, Princess, just to hurt my children." I felt a low growl vibrate against my leg. Princess was standing right beside me, eyes fixed on the screen. "I'm asking for help," Trina sobbed, holding up a digital payment link, "to fight the legal fees, to keep a roof over my kids' heads." I didn't wait. I didn't type a rebuttal. I simply clicked "Join as guest" on the moderator panel. The screen split. Trina's face went pale. The heroic victim mask didn't just slip, it shattered. "Hi, Trina," I said. My voice was calm, the sound of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "I noticed you mentioned the clerical error. Is that what we're calling the $60,000 in forged loans now?" "Julia, stop this," she hissed, eyes darting off camera. "I'm not the one on camera asking for legal fees while sitting in front of $12,000 of stolen handbags," I replied. I held up the USB drive. And as for Princess, she didn't get stolen. She ran away because you forgot to feed her, and she brought me a little gift. I hit the screen share button. The forum didn't see my face anymore. They saw the floor-level footage from the dog's collar. They heard Dad talking about paper transactions. They heard Trina's cold plan to use my son as a distraction for the Aspen refund. The comments went silent for 3 seconds. Then it exploded. "Wait, is that her father? She planned the wedding insult? That's sick. Look at the boxes." Trina reached for the phone, knocking it over. The camera caught a glimpse of the room. Mom and Dad were standing in the corner with the hollowed-out expressions of people who realized their reliable daughter was a witness. "Julia," Dad's voice came through the knocked-over phone, sounding small and old. "Turn it off, please." "I didn't turn it on, Dad. Trina did. She wanted a global audience. Well, she has one." I ended the stream. I didn't need to see the end. I knew what happened when a house of cards met a hurricane. I looked at Princess. She let out a soft bark and trotted to Harper's room, guarding the only part of this family worth protecting. But as I closed my laptop, a new message popped up from Herbert's lawyer. "Mr. Weaver is ready to sign a full confession. He has one condition. He wants to talk to you about what your sister is planning next."
The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in my kitchen after the screen went black. I had just dismantled my family's reputation in front of the entire neighborhood, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to apologize. The call from Humbert's lawyer came at 11 p.m. I took it on the back porch. "Julia." Humbert's voice was thin, filtered through a jailhouse phone. "I'm signing the confession. Trina, she's not stopping. She's auditioning for a reality TV docuseries about financial abuse. She's already signed the life rights for Mom and Dad." I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my throat. In Trina's world, a crime wasn't a mistake, it was a pilot episode. "She's editing clips from your old nanny cam," Humbert whispered. "She's making it look like you were neglecting Harper." My heart stopped. She was willing to put my son's face on a screen to save her own skin. "She's planning to confront you tomorrow," he said, "with a camera crew. She wants the dramatic climax where she begs for her dog back and you turn her away." I hung up. I looked at Princess. Trina didn't want the dog because she loved her. She wanted the dog because Princess was the ultimate prop, the stolen pet to make the audience weep. I didn't panic. I called Bob. "How fast can you get that security firm here?" I spent the night working. Rent receipts, canceled checks, dental bills, every clip from the dog's collar. At 7:45 a.m., a black SUV pulled in. 2 cameramen hopped out, followed by Trina. She was wearing her relatable victim uniform. Tragic, determined. She didn't know I'd installed 2 high-definition monitors on my front windows facing the street. As she reached for the doorbell, I hit play. The monitors flickered to life. Instead of my face, the neighbors saw the footage of Dad and Mom discussing the paper transaction. They heard Trina's voice laughing about how Julia likes the feeling of being needed. Trina froze. "Julia, open the door," she screamed. "This is private property." "It's my porch, Trina, and these are my receipts. If your production company wants the truth, they can have the full file. Or we can talk about the $60,000 in front of the cameras right now." The camera operators looked at each other. They weren't filming Trina anymore. They were filming the screens. They found something better than a scorned sister. They found a con artist being unmasked in real time. Mom and Dad pulled up, but they didn't get out. They saw the neighborhood gathered. They saw the end of the Weaver family empire.
The aggressive whir of professional camera stabilizers, the muffled, high-pitched shouting of a woman in a panic, the heavy, rhythmic thump of a car door slamming. The camera operators didn't stop. In the world of reality TV, a scripted tragedy is good, but a live, unscripted implosion is gold. They smelled a different kind of blood in the water, and it wasn't mine. Trina was spinning. Her relatable victim mask didn't just slip, it melted. "Turn those off," she shrieked, lunging toward my window as if she could claw the digital truth off the glass. "That's private conversation." "You're on my porch, Trina," my voice echoed through the speakers. "And you brought the cameras. I'm just providing the B-roll." The producer stepped forward. She wasn't looking at Trina anymore. She was staring at the forged loan documents on the monitor. "Is that your father?" the producer asked, her voice dropping into a professional chill. "Trina, you told us this was a story about an inheritance dispute." She's deep-faking this," Trina spun around, hands shaking. I hit a button on my tablet. The audio switched to the clip of Trina laughing about how I liked the feeling of being needed while they drained my accounts. Mom and Dad finally stepped out of their car. They looked like they had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Dad tried to walk toward the porch. "Julia, enough! Think of the family name." "The family name is currently a line item on a fraud investigation, Dad," I said. "If you take one more step, the security firm will trespass you." He stopped. He realized the cameras Trina invited to capture my downfall were currently filming his shame. The producer turned to her cameraman. Keep rolling. This isn't the scorned sister. This is the Weaver Con. Get a close-up of the sister's face, now. Trina realized the tide had turned. The production company wasn't her ally. They were her predators. She turned and ran toward the SUV, tripping over her designer boots. We're leaving. The shoot is over. The shoot is just getting started, the producer called out. As the SUV peeled away, leaving my parents standing in the ringing silence, I felt a vibration in my pocket. An email from the bank. We are freezing the disputed accounts and initiating a recovery suit against Trina Weaver and Humbert Allen. We will also be contacting the other parties mentioned. The other parties. Mom and Dad. I picked up Harper, who had just wandered into the kitchen. Is the movie over, Mommy? He asked. Yeah, baby, I whispered. The movie is over. We're starting a new one now, and this time, we're the only ones in the cast. But as I went to turn off the screens, I saw one last thing. A small black sedan was parked at the end of the block. A man was sitting inside, watching my house. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a producer. It was Humbert's brother, and he didn't look like he was there for a talk. The ominous rumble of a car engine idling, the faint metallic click of a car door unlocking. The black sedan didn't move. I recognized the driver now, Maynard Jr., Humbert's older brother. He wasn't like the rest of them. He didn't care about narratives. He cared about the $60,000 that was now frozen in a legal vacuum. I pulled the curtains shut. My heart was thumping, but it wasn't panic. It was the cold, calculated pulse of a woman who had already burned her bridges. Harper, go play in your room. Mom has a boring business call, I said. He skipped away, oblivious to the fact that his uncle-in-law was stalking our driveway. I called Bob. He's here, isn't he? That's Maynard Jr. He's got a reputation for settling debts that banks won't touch. I'm not paying a cent of that fraud, Bob, I said. I looked at Princess. She was standing by the basement door, her hackles raised. She wasn't barking, she was pointing. I switched the feed to the internal cameras. A shadow moved across the basement floor. It wasn't Maynard Jr., it was Trina. She hadn't stayed in the SUV. She doubled back, slipping through the side gate while the camera crew was distracted. She was rummaging through my storage bins, her designer jacket torn. Where is it? She hissed. The original signatures. She was looking for the hard copies, the physical proof of her forgery. She found the silver lockbox I'd tucked away years ago. She grabbed it, a jagged laugh escaping her throat. But as she turned to leave, she froze. I'd hit the smart home emergency lockdown the second I saw her. The door was deadbolted from the outside. Julia, she screamed, pounding on the door. Open this! I'll tell everyone you're holding me hostage. The cameras saw you break in, Trina, I said through the intercom, and Maynard Jr. is sitting in my driveway. I think he's waiting for his cut. Should I let him in to talk to you? The screaming stopped instantly. Trina knew Maynard. He didn't take "I'll blog about it" as an answer. Please, Julia, please, don't let him get me. I'll tell the truth. I'll tell the police it was all me. Just get him away. I looked at the front monitor. Maynard Jr. was stepping out of the sedan, adjusting his jacket, eyes fixed on my front door. I had a choice. Be the sister she'd spent a decade exploiting, or let the consequences arrive. I dialed the detective. My sister is in my basement. She's broken in to steal evidence, and there's a man in my driveway who looks like he's here to collect on a felony. I hung up and looked at Princess. She dropped her toy at my feet. The final act was starting, and for the first time, I wasn't paying for the tickets.
The flashing lights this time weren't blue and red. They were the amber glow of the street lights reflecting off the rain-slicked driveway as the tow truck hauled away the black sedan. Maynard Jr. didn't put up a fight. Once the police arrived and saw him with a collection ledger, he folded faster than one of Trina's wedding napkins. By the time they led Trina out of my basement in handcuffs, she wasn't screaming, she was shivering. She looked at me, not with rage, but with a hollow realization. I was no longer the mirror she used to admire herself. I was just a wall. "Julia," she whispered, "what am I supposed to tell the kids?" "Tell them the truth, Trina," I said. "Tell them their mother had everything, but she wanted mine too." The door slammed, the siren chirped once, then a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight lifting off my roof. A week later, the Weaver Con pilot was scrapped. Reality TV producers lose interest when the villain has a mountain of digital evidence. Instead, the footage was subpoenaed. It became the centerpiece of the fraud case against Trina and Humbert. Mom and Dad tried one last time, a handwritten letter on the heavy stationery I'd bought for Mom's birthday. It didn't ask for forgiveness, it asked for a loan to cover their legal fees. I didn't even open it. I marked it "Return to Sender" and handed it to the mailman with a smile. I spent that Saturday in the backyard. The Bank of Julia wasn't just closed, it had been liquidated and reinvested. I looked at the new swing set Harper was conquering and the small doghouse Bob helped me build for Princess. The little Bichon was mid-zoomy, her white fur a blur against the grass. She stopped, panting, and dropped that tattered plush toy at my feet. "You did good, Princess," I whispered, scratching behind her ears. The twist wasn't that I'd won. The twist was that I stopped playing. I realized the family I'd been protecting wasn't a family, it was a transaction. And once I stopped paying the bill, they simply ceased to exist in my world. My phone chimed, a calendar alert, flight to Sedona in 2 hours. I grabbed our bags. No first-class upgrades for 10 people, no planning committees, just me, a 6-year-old with a toy car, and a dog who knew how to keep a secret. As we backed out of the driveway, I looked at the house. It wasn't a fortress anymore, it was just a home. My name is Julia Weaver, and walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was the first page of a book I finally got to write myself. The silence didn't feel like a punishment anymore, it felt like peace.